Hi, it's Kyle. I'm back for another Friday Agronomist, and we're standing next to one of our soybean fields answering some soybean questions at this point of the year. I've had a lot of guys ask me, are my beans maturing because disease pressure is making them mature? And as we kind of look at soybeans up to R1, we always talk about day length determines when they flower, which is very, very true in the United States. But at this point, once you get past R1, heat units do drive some of the maturity on the beans. So what we've been looking at is we're almost running, I just checked, about 300 heat units over normal. So yeah, it's pushing our maturity a little bit faster on soybeans than normally we would see. So the other thing is, okay, we do have disease in a lot of fields. How heavy is disease pressure this year? And it actually came in very late. So part of the reason our beans are so fast maturing, we normally see that disease kind of come in August and early September. Usually it's mid-August we start seeing sudden death and white mold show up, where we can visibly see it just even driving by. This year that was about the same thing. We did see them coming in at that point, but instead of seeing R3 to R4 soybeans, we saw R4 to R5 soybeans have sudden death, brown stem rot, and white mold. So for the most part, disease pressure wasn't as heavy this year as we normally would see, which is strange given how wet our spring was and normally how we see sudden death develop when we have wet compaction going into the season. But for the most part, beans are just maturing based on how high heat units we've had lately. So these beans are maturing just so fast, and it's just natural. They should be fine. So I'm not too concerned about that yet. The other thing we are really concerned about is tar spot. A lot of guys have been asking questions about what's going on with tar spots, and the most interesting thing I've heard this week was what we see with tar spot is we need another fungus to make this complex, or to form a complex with tar spot, to where we start seeing necrosis show up in the plants, or we start seeing the plants actually die. We're seeing that. The funny thing is, here we have tar spot in this area near Ixonia, but I haven't seen it where it actually is starting to kill plants. It's just still the tar spot lesions on the leaves. You get down East Troy and Walworth County and that way, and we're starting to see where it actually is killing plants. And where we're seeing it, and the theory I'm hearing is that maybe it's formed a complex with gray leaf spot, which gray leaf spot in Wisconsin is not a normal occurrence for us. We see some every year, but this year has been especially bad. We've seen more and more this year than we normally have seen, which does make sense. So maybe this complex is forming with gray leaf spot, and that's why we're seeing a higher incidence, and it's very logical that that's going on. But is it proven? No. And, we have yet to see the other disease that normally comes along with tar spot to form this complex. So it's plausible, but do we know for certain? Not yet. The other thing is, we've had a lot of guys asking about, does it overwinter in Wisconsin? And in all likelihoods it does. It's a Mexican disease. It's not something we normally see in the United States. It's only been here about 3 years, but it keeps coming back in the same areas and expanding its area of adaptation. So obviously tar spot is overwintering here. The next question is it overwinter on residue? We don't know. We don't know if it overwinters on residue yet. We don't know if it overwinters in stuff along field edges. We just don't know those answers to those questions yet. Another question we've had come in is, does it affect as far as mycotoxins in silage? And as far as the university is concerned, they don't think so, but nobody's 100% for sure. So it's going to be recommended that you keep testing for mycotoxins as you start feeding 2018 silage to your cows. So it's just a lot of unknowns yet, and over winter we're going to have some more answers. We would hope by next year we'll know more about it. The weird thing with tar spot's been, we've seen it in one field and not in the field next to it. We've seen it in some hybrids and less in others. The more staggering we have in a hybrid right now, it seems like the more disease tolerance we have, the less we've seen tar spot. And our fast dye, fast dry hybrids are really starting to show more and more of that tar spot. So when you start getting into that Monsanto style genetics, corn state genetics, we've seen more and more tar spot in that stuff than we've seen in some of the DuPont style genetics, where we have a later stay green and some of those plants stay green longer. So what our concern would be right now is if you have plants that are dying from tar spots fairly early, it's going to be kind of like a frost type scenario, but you can throw another disease kicker in there. So those plants are going to start falling down pretty soon. So we're going to want to make sure we try to get them off. Moisture might actually be a little high. Test weight could be kind of low on some of those fields, but it's a lot easier to pick it up now and then instead of trying to pick it off the ground. So it's the management decisions we're still learning on the fly. So a lot of this stuff we're going to be updating as we kind of go along. Another thing is we've had probably almost 18 inches of rain here in the last 3 weeks at the farm. A lot of people are in that 10 to 12 inch range. We're going to have implications on harvest, compaction. We're going to have implications on fall tillage. Still yet to be determined. You know, we finally have a somewhat dry stretch of weather, it looks like. So those are going to be things we'll talk about in future videos. So stay tuned for those.